Good, right. There. First thing we're going to do, and I know your map packs are due when? Tomorrow. Cinco de Mayo. All right. Africa. Number one, George Bush, is not a country. It is a continent. It has a bunch of countries. Its physical geography is enormous. It's 20% of the landmass of the entire world. Top half, where we're going to start out, is all desert, the Saharan Desert. It's also a fancy little trade route. Below that, we call that sub-Saharan Africa. And so on the coasts, we get like rainforest, very well-watered plains. In the middle, kind of savanna land to dry desert and mountains, and it's very arid way down here. So this is an enormous continent. We're going to start over here, talking about other than, Egypt, which we should get. We're going to start over here, come over to the West African kingdoms, go to the middle, and with slavery, the Portuguese are going to destroy the East Coast, and the Dutch and British are going to set up South Africa. But the very first thing to talk about are the two big migrations. Migrations, which means it's more than one, plural. The Bantu is going to start like right around here, modern day like Gabon, Cameroon, go over to the middle and to the east, and then south. It's going to take 1,000 years. So please do not write about the Bantu migration. It's migrations. Secondly, the Swahili. Bantu is a migration and a root language dialect. Where's Alec when you need him? And there will also be the second one up and down the east coast known as Swahili, like Asante Sana. If you watch The Lion King, Rafiki will speak Swahili. A little baboon, I kind of like Rafiki. So anyway, there's our quick look at African geography, if you didn't know that. Okay, starting out. Whoa. Oh, what? All right. Almost panicked. Africa, big one. Yes. Okay. Bam. Is that what we got? Yes. All right. We got Egypt, right? Pharaohs, central power, pyramids, three kingdoms, river valley. There we got that. Okay, good. All right. Next, going straight south into what is today, I guess we would call the Sudan in East Africa, around 500 BC. So 500 BC, think of in terms of the ancient Greek civilization is getting started. This is way, way, way back when. We have the capital of Meroe, the Meroic Empire. It will begin a massive trading empire, and it will eventually call itself the Empire of Aksum. I always say, if you want to know what you're trading with the Middle East, you can always ask them a question. All right? So they are just below Egypt, and they're great iron workers. And due to their proximity, just across the Red Sea, kind of the Sinai Peninsula, I think Moses there, will be a hinge of trading, a bridge between Africa and Asia. So they are a very big deal when it comes to cultural assimilation and trading in the ancient world. Think of the Mesopotamian civilizations from Phoenicia to Israel to the Hittites to the Assyrians to the Babylonians. They will trade with Aksum. Right around 350 BC. All right. So 500, you have either A, the height of the Greek civilization, I'm going to get my head in the game here, or the beginning of the Roman Republic, down to about 350 BC. They are a major trading area in East Africa. Goes down, as I said, to what is today modern day Ethiopia. They're that big trading network that will trade away as far eventually as the Indian Ocean via the Indian Ocean trade routes. And they kind of control the trade routes on the north-south axis, the right-hand side of Africa. They are very cosmopolitan. You have Asian, you have Arab, you have sub-Saharan African, you have Bedouin North African, you've probably got some Turk in there. It was a very cosmopolitan place, sort of an earlier version of modern-day Istanbul. And it was all built around trading. All right. Christianity will take root here I put 300 BC. Kind of hard for Christianity to take root in BC, kind of slightly impossible. Around 300 AD, Christianity will take root. And that's very interesting because it's very, very, very close to the heart of Islam. But even today, if you go to this area of the world today, there is a large Christian presence in East Africa. They kind of were, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, kept safe from Islamic trade. One, they were one of the peoples of the book, and because they were a already well-known trading empire. All right, we good with Aksum? If you don't know, you can always Aksum. All right, good. We ready? All right, fantastic. All right, here we go to geography. We already touched on it. Because Africa is so big, it will be kind of sectioned off, kind of regional empires, because there are big deserts. There are deep rivers. There are long distances between civilizations. But that aside, Africa has a tremendous wealth of mineral rights, natural resources, from emeralds to diamonds, to gold, to salt, to copper, to exotic animals. So it's going to be an area that will be very rich in money. There are things there that everybody wants. The Bantu, as we talk about the migrations, are going to spread from west to east, and about a third of the people in Africa today will speak a Bantu language dialect. They were herders who were simply looking at increasing their grazing land for their sheep and for their cows and their goats, and they become kind of like this massive snowplow where they force out and displace many people along the way. This is from 500 BC till about 1500. It takes a very long time. It's a 1,000-year period where this went on. Migration number 2, we talked about Swahili, sort of a little bit slightly later, going up and down the east coast. All right, so we have that. West African empires, figure the right-hand side, the shoulder socket of West Africa, closest to the United States. West African empires are going to run sort of the length of the Middle Ages in Europe. Think about it that way. Tang Song Dynasty, China. Figure 800 is a good starting point. The reign of Charlemagne going on up and through. They were already there when Rome collapsed in 400 AD, but the empires don't really get big until a little bit later on. Another good way to think of Ghana, Songhai, and Mali is across the Atlantic. It will be the heyday of the Mayan and the Aztec and the Incan empires. There are parallels going on in West Africa and Mesoamerica. They create a major trade route across the Sahara Desert. They're on a vertical north-south trade route and an east-west trade route, connecting them with the Middle East, eventually the Silk Road. And in the first empire, the foundational bedrock empire, is the Kingdom of Ghana. Ghana is extremely powerful because of the trade routes, and what they do, think of them kind of as like a foundation Chinese dynasty in West Africa. After it collapses, the next empire will build right on top of it. They will keep what Ghana does and just try and make it a little bigger. Very interestingly, the royal line was descended through the king's closest female relative, and that in the heyday of kings and empires, the king of Ghana had much more direct access to the daily people than probably any other king on the planet. A similarity with ancient Rome and with the Aztecs is they lived off of tribute of conquered people. They would conquer somebody. When you were assimilated into the empire, you paid them tribute every year. One of the big things they're known for is growing is sugar and bananas, and they made money off of renting lush farmland for other people. Another Asian or Chinese similarity is they maintained governmental monopolies on things that everybody needed, namely salt and copper. The other thing was cotton. And people paid for these things with gold. Right? Or as European explorers come in, the Ghana will pay them with their rich deposits of gold. They will purchase these three things and then hang on to them and charge other empires a high price for them. By 700, they begin to work with Muslim traders coming across North Africa as it's the heyday of the spread of Islam. And many people in Ghana do not convert early on to Islam, but they made elaborate trade agreements. They were very flexible working with the Muslims, bringing their trade items. Eventually, the king of Ghana will invite Muslim scholars to be advisors at his court. And this is where African history begins to change a little bit. Because up to this time, outside of ancient Egypt, a lot of people in Africa base things on an oral tradition. Things were passed down via the spoken word from, mother to daughter, from father to son. But now, history and things are written down. But you got to be careful, because what they are writing down comes from an Islamic or an Arabic bias. Striking parallel is Cortez walking up to the Aztecs. They didn't write, but we learn about them from what the conquistadors said. Same with this period in Africa. Stuff is being written down, but it's from other people. Good? And the king always maintained a very strong military presence. Right in the heart of the Middle Ages, right before the Crusades start, they are conquered by a group from Morocco. Questions on Ghana? All right, bam. Next one is Mali, with 2 L's, but it's actually only one. Had a rough night last night, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sorry, dude, we're just getting started, dude, I'm sorry. All right. Kingdom of Mali, 1200s. 1200s, the high Middle Ages, we're getting close to the Renaissance in Europe. They keep what Ghana did, and they like the solid economy that Ghana built. This is what Ghana did really, really, really well. And they begin to monopolize not only the gold trade, they controlled all the gold going into and out of Africa, and they maintained those copper and salt monopolies. People wanted that. They had to pay Mali. Most famous king is a guy named Sundiata. Sundiata will reign from 1232 to about 1255, and he's a great conqueror. He goes out and greatly expands Mali. It is much, much bigger than Ghana. The entire shoulder socket and like rib cage of Africa falls under the Malian Empire. He will begin to found the famous city of Timbuktu, which is built on the Niger River on 7 hills, a very striking parallel to ancient Rome on the Tiber River up in Italy. Most famous, the core group of people who ran the Malian Empire were the Malinke people. It's made famous here in the United States from Alex Haley's series Roots, where Kunta Kinte was a prince of Mali until captured in the slave trade. It is the Kingdom of Mali that will first begin to use prisoners of war as slaves. All right, we're going to conquer you. You're going to do the heavy, hard, laborious work, growing the sugar cane, picking the cotton. It is Mali who starts that. Around 1100, there is a large conversion to a practice of Islam. And this begins to change the empire both positively and negatively. Scholars will come in and they will help found the empire. They will bring Islamic law, Islamic religion, Islamic art, but some of the local Africans and their traditions are being displaced. Probably the most famous outside of Sundiata is King Mansa Musa. And Mansa Musa, think of Aladdin going into Aqaba. He goes on that big Hajj over to Mecca in 1324, right as the Renaissance is getting started. He hands out so much gold that he is, devalues the currency in Egypt for 10 years, and people begin to hear about this king throwing away gold up in Europe. Angelo, you getting this, brother? I mean, it's your time, not mine. I just want to make sure you're not like playing tech. If you are, that's fine.
Oh, I was typing.
All right, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So in 1100, was the conversion to Islam peaceful or forced?
Very peaceful. Very peaceful. Great question. It was very peaceful because the king of Mali converted, and it was all to facilitate trade. There was nothing militaristic about it here. Mansa Musa brings back a lot more Islamic scholars, and Timbuktu becomes a major iconic city. It was the Athens of Africa, where everybody wanted to go to study and to learn. Mansa Musa happens to be one of those iconic leaders we hear about repeatedly, that when he dies, there's a power vacuum, there's no one to carry on his vision, there's a small-ish civil war, and Mali collapses in 1337. So, figure Renaissance in Europe, it is the Yuan or the Mongol dynasty over in Asia. All right, it's the height of the Aztec and Incan empires in the New World. Everybody good? Okay, all right. All right, Kingdom of Mali. We're going to go a little bit more here. You know what? This is supposed to be Kingdom of Songhai. Excuse me. What was I doing? Clearly not paying attention. All right, this is Songhai. All right, there's Sonia Ali. Going from the beginning of Prince Henry the Navigator up through the beginning of the transatlantic trade. Sonia Ali, 1492, same year that Columbus gets lost, the Songhai Empire will pick up right after Mali collapses, with about a little over 100 years. Sonia Ali, however, worshipped the traditional African gods. While he was the king of Songhai and most people were Muslim, he was not. He was Muslim when there were a lot of traders in and around the area. And he builds a massive imperial army. He had a navy that could travel the Niger, the Senegal, the Gambia River, as well as horse-mounted soldiers on armed cavalry. Very scary, very fast, and powerful. He dies just as everything is getting started, and he is succeeded by a guy named Muhammad al-Tari. And he is opposite Sonia Ali because he is hardcore Muslim. He keeps up the expansion, and he wants to make his empire a true African model of Islam, like transplanting Mecca to West Africa. But he's one of those guys that he's never, ever, ever satisfied. Islamic traders show up in large numbers. His advisors show up. He kicks out his own people in favor of Arabic Muslims. And he tries to emulate Mansa Musa, but no matter what he does, he's never satisfied. It's never good enough for him. There's always more that he can do. And they will fall in 1591, heyday of colonialism. It's the beginning of the period of absolutism, because invaders come from Morocco who have the new big-time invention of gunpowder. And so they are able to defeat the empire of the Songhai. But all of these guys, from Mali, from Mansa Musa to Soni Ali to Muhammad al-Tari, they bring much attention to Africa from the European world. And this is going to come back to haunt them. Explorers are initially going to come for gold. Then there's so much gold in Africa it's laying on the ground. But as slave trade will pick up, as the Native Americans, world, historical event here, world historical context, as the Native Americans in the New World die due to labor practices and disease, we're going to start the slave trade. And the slave trade will change Africa and Africa's economy. Resources will be pulled from Africa, number one, but also it will lose a non-renewable resource, and that is their own people. And it is monetary wealth extracted from Africa and the Americas that will fuel colonialism and imperialism. Hey, look what we're able to do. If you can't stop us from taking it, then we're going to get every last little drop out of the milkshake possible. And this has a major negative impact on the entire continent that we're still talking about today when we talk about decolonization. So this is kind of a big setup moment here. West Africa was great. There were three powerful kingdoms, but now we're going to introduce, who don't we like to see in Africa? What nation of people?
Europeans.
Well, besides the European, but Mitchell, the Portuguese. Damn, those Portuguese. Do they do anything good? Negative Ghost Riders, blow stuff up and cause mass chaos. So, anyways, Portugal, whatever. The Portuguese, yes, sir.
With Songhai, the guy that came after Sundiata,
Yeah.
I have his name down as Ahsoka. Is he going to be called Muhammad al-Tari?
He's Askia Muhammad al-Tari is his big name. Same guy. I just didn't put in the first name. No, it's like from South Carolina, but like African style. Yeah. Like it's Richard Roberts. What? Ricky Bobby Roberts? What is going on? I don't even know. So, Portuguese. First to explore Africa. They wake up one day and they look south and say, holy snot rag, there is an entire continent there. And they begin to slowly, with Henry the Navigator and his navigational school, they hug the coastline. What do we got? What's down there? And because of Columbus getting lost in the New World shortly thereafter, new crops are brought from the Portuguese over to Africa. High protein foods that grow great in the African climate, like corn, beans, and potatoes. And as soon as the Portuguese get there, what does everybody else start doing? Think of you guys in a fire drill. I called you guys lemmings. When the Portuguese are there, what are the Spanish and the British and the French going to start doing?
Join in.
We're going down too. What? Africa? What? There's a big continent? Hello, what? So they're going to go down there. They're going to check it out. We begin to carve it up into spheres of influence. And the names of the coastline are given by the main export. The Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Salt Coast, the Pepper Coast. It's where you went to get that product. And all of these are on the coastline, like the rounded shoulder socket of Africa. And the first place is an area called Senegambia. It is the wide point of Africa where the Senegal and Gambia rivers make penetration into the African continent. And the traders come, plentiful gold, plentiful salt, which is worth its weight in gold, and cotton. But again, a big driver becomes the slave trade. Gold brings the Europeans. Slave trade keeps them coming back for centuries. And in the 1500s, think of the century of the 1500s, most of the slaves, 48% go to the Caribbean, 47% go to Brazil, like 4% go to the American South, and 1% to like Europe, and 0.5 to Europe, and 0.5 to Asia. 1/3 of the slaves come from Senegambia. That is an enormous drain on population on West Africa. Think of it as like an alien movie where they're coming to consume resources. Even with the American foods and the population boom, sooner or later you run out of people. On the coastline, tribes were mainly safe because they traded with the Europeans. But you go to the interior, everybody's kind of fair game. So we begin to slowly move southward. Gold and being on the coast helps some, but the slave trade will become more profitable than gold. If you invest in a slave ship, you can have all the ethics and morals you want. But when you find out, if you invest or captain a slave ship and you make one successful trip to Africa and back, you never have to work again a day in your life. Your ship will be burnt because it'll smell and be disgusting, but a lot of people just kind of buried the ethicality and the morality of it for cold, hard cash. Eventually, the Portuguese will enter what I call like the stomach area, right above the belly button and the sternum. It is the heart of Africa, the Congo. Congo is one of the most dangerous, difficult African nations to go to today. You have regional wars, you have genocide, you have epidemics, and a lot of it we can trace back to this period. Portuguese enter the Congo. They are now looking for slaves because in the New World a big business has grown up. Dirk's dad, as a little boy, used to, at 3:30, his mom would ring a bell, and they would have what time, Dirk?
What time? Supper.
Tea time. It's 3:30. God save the Queen. And then one day, when he got older, Dirk's grandma dropped these little cubes in Dirk's dad's tea, and it became
Tasty.
It's tasty. Why, Dirk?
Because it has flavor in it.
And all of a sudden, he quit saying spit-spot cheerio, shucks, man, let's move to South Carolina, we got sweet tea. And his accent changed just like that, and he invented Bonglace, otherwise known as Bojangles, because all of a sudden, tea wasn't muddy water, it tasted great because of sugar. Well, everybody wants sugar, so since we want sugar, we need more sugar plantations. And on the sugar plantations, Laura, we need slaves. Well, let's go get them from the Congo, which has a deep river that cuts deep into the heart of Africa. How are we going to get slaves from these guys? Well, I go to Tribal Chieftain Barnett, and I say, hey there, Mitchell, you're from fake Texas. We're going to give you a carat of tobacco and a bottle of this here stuff we call fire water. What do you think of that?
It's good.
And Mitchell likes it, and he uses it up, and he says, I want more. And I said, well, I'll give you more, but I need some of your people. And Mitchell says, well, shoot, there's a neighboring village on the creek over. I live in, Lake Hogan. They live in Claremont. I'll get some of those Claremont people, capture them and sell them to you. And I say, let's do it. And bam, so Congo becomes pillaged and raped. They exchange consumable narcotics in exchange for their people who fuel the sugar plantations over in the New World. Who likes Portugal? Okay, good. All right. All right. Portugal, we have King Afonso. King Afonso the First. All right, this is, again, right in the 1500s. He was educated by a Portuguese missionary. He's a Christian guy. And he writes a letter, king to king, African king to Portuguese king. Brother, you got to stop taking my people. And the Portuguese king says, no, why? Nothing we can do by it. We're making a lot of money. Also, if you're in Portugal, this is taking place where?
Somewhere else. I can't see it.
Can't see it from my house. It's in Africa. I don't know what's going on there. I will justify it with Christianity, and I can't see it from my house. You tell me you're helping those poor people down there? Well, hell, keep helping them. Yeah, you're helping them onto a slave ship to the New World, but you're telling me you're helping, so I'm gonna roll with that one. All right, you guys doing okay? All right. Portuguese don't like King Afonso so much, they try and have him killed. And this makes the people angry. Man, you don't want to try and kill our king. And it sets off a thing known as the Jaga or the Yaga Wars, which are protests against Portuguese intrusion into the Congo. Afonso is able to restrict the Portuguese to one port. It's, like Point Noir. It's sitting there on the end of the Congo River there to this day. I believe the old show, The Amazing Race, one of its pit stops was at this old Portuguese fort. Is it still on? I want to do that. So Mr. Blackwell and I would destroy it. Anyway, need like 6 months or something. I don't know. Anyway, Portuguese are going to move on. And they're going to go down the Cape of Good Hope, and they're going to stop and resupply in South Africa. And they watch the jumping great whites from Shark Week. They're like, whew, boy, if we get around this sucker, what's over there? Well, I don't know. Well, let's go. And it's a very dangerous, turbulent route, but when they pop out on the other side, they get over into the East Coast, and here they run into the Swahili civilization. And built on the East Coast is a big hub of trading from Africa to the Middle East, all the way over to the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean trade, the Islamic trading ships, the dhows with their lateen sails, this is big business. And the Portuguese say, oh my God, yeah, that's Adrica, which is a new continent, also known as Africa. Damn lightning storm. All right, I don't blame it on that. All the way over to, way far over in the Pacific into Indonesia. And the Portuguese see, and they go, well, all these people trading aren't Christians. What we got to do to them, Abigail? Well, what do we got to do to them? We could convert them, but it's much easier. We'll kill them. Let's kill them. All right. It's another crusade. Look, they're all Muslims. We'll kill them. We're either going to monopolize this trade or we're going to destroy it. So they begin to attack the Islamic merchant ships. All right. And they also go after the trading states and ports on the East Coast. It's justified back in Portugal as a holy war, but they want to monopolize all the trading and all the government. And they do. And they leave behind a destabilizing force known as the Prazeros, which are Portuguese sailors who stay behind, and they have children with native Africans. The children, part Portuguese, part African, don't fit into society. They're neither controllable by Portugal or by African standards, and they are a major destabilizing force of violence in East Africa. At the same time, there is a massive drought that affects what is today Ethiopia, and the area just becomes poverty-stricken and destroyed pretty much ever since then. So, widespread destruction on East Africa. Woo! Go Portuguese. Okay. Boom.
Wait, what was the effect of the Prazeros?
Major destabilization. They were just uncontrollable, kind of like road warriors. We're going to drop down to kind of the torso, kind of the bottom of the stomach area on the left-hand side. And we're going to get to the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, near and dear to my heart, Rhodesia or Zimbabwe. And it's kind of set inland from the coast a little bit. So Zimbabwe is safe and protected from both the Portuguese and the Islamic traders on the, I love to say the Limpopo, it's my favorite river, and the Zambia rivers. And around 800 AD, think Charlemagne, think same time as Ghana is going on, you have this group of people called the Shona people that start a civilization. Running parallel with the West African empires and the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas in the New World, the Zimbabwe civilization kind of grows. And they're just in this little happy, kind of protected area all by themselves. Nobody bothers them. It's part grass farmland, it's part mountainous, and they got a lot of gold. And they build 150 city-states that are almost mere images of the ancient Greek city-states. Except they didn't fight each other as much. Showing that people around the world are going to kind of do the similar thing at the same time. Each of the city-states will have a central acropolis that house the main temples and a main granary. The most famous of which is the so-called Great Zimbabwe that has a 60-foot wall. It's not as tall, but it's much wider than the Great Wall of China. It's 60 acres, and the stones don't have mortar. They are dovetailed or jigsawed to interlock. And a lot of them are still there as they were master stonemasons. In and around the Great Zimbabwe, we find porcelain and glass from China. We found Persian artifacts, ironwork, and we found Zimbabwean ironwork, metalwork, and woodwork in those locations. So we don't know if they had a direct trade route somehow, or if there was a middleman. Part of the problem with our African civilizations is, again, there was no writing, and the Portuguese never got there to write on it. So this makes it difficult to know a whole lot over the entire continent because everything was based on an oral tradition. Am I good to move on? You guys good over here? All right. All right. South Africa. We're going to come back to it a couple times. The Dutch East India Company. All right. When they started that little shoot around the Cape of Good Hope, they're going to build a colony there. It was a place to repair the ship, put on fresh water and provisions to get ready to travel over the Indian Ocean to India. And started by the Dutch, by the Netherlands. And they originally traded with the native Khoikhoi people who were like this little happy little shepherds and herders. But pretty soon the colony goes too big. Guys get off the ship and they're like, man, I want to get back on. It's kind of warm here. It's kind of sunny. The sky's blue, right? Not on the ship. And so the colony gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And they soon begin to displace the Khoikhois. They begin to carve up their farmland and then take the Khoikhoi resources. Soon the Khoikhois are displaced and the Dutch begin to take over. And there is some fighting, but the Khoikhois are not militaristically powerful enough to deal with the Dutch, and so they will have their lands taken from them as we start imperialism. One of the big things that show up in all of these areas are African proverbs, kind of like Aesop fable or biblical parable stories, things that are going to teach you a lesson. The Africans would say, an animal that has been burned by the flames will stay away from fire. We say, once bitten, twice shy. Or if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're never going to do it again. So these kind of simple, easy educational tales show up similarly, in similar fashion, there we go, around the continent. All right. So, kaboom. What impacts Africa? Mercantilism. Transatlantic trade, Columbian exchange, whatever you want to call it. We are making money for the mother country. And as a result of bringing over workers into the New World, major depletion of the African population. But Africans were needed for a couple reasons. Number one, access. Number two, along the equator, there was a resistance to malaria. And on Lara's sugar plantation, we simply need more workers. We need more slaves. We're now not only growing sugar, but also cotton and tobacco, rice, indigo, all heavy, laborious agricultural activities that there's no way to mechanize it. You just got to go out there and do it. So this will kickstart what we know as the triangle trade. Slaves come from Africa, go to the Caribbean, and we should know this, the Americas, to work and harvest the intensive raw materials. These materials are shipped from the Americas to Europe to be made into finished products. As the European ships come back to the Americas with finished products, they also pick up more slaves. And it is this mercantilistic business that fuels the age of absolutism. Money for the mother country, for Louis XIV, for the Stuarts in England, for the Habsburgs of Spain. This is where we get our money. And Africans will play a role in this, as people on the edges of Africa will go to the interior, capture rival tribes or nations to sell to the Europeans, and then have their land taken. I can expand farther inland because my enemies are no longer there. So this one kind of makes sense, right? We got this one. All right. Imperialism comes next. This is that age. All right, we're into the 1800s, and now it's the bitter European soccer rivals. Mitchell gets 1, Ryan's got to get 2, Isaac's got to get 3, Dirk's got to get 4. We want to have more land than our rivals. At first, it's productive, then it's strategic, and then we just get anything because it's there. And it started by Belgium, by King Leopold of Belgium, who goes down into the Congo and hires explorers to go out and map the wilds of Africa. And King Leopold will kick off the Great Scramble as European countries tripped and fought over each other to gain access to resources. European countries will do what I call the Settlers of Catan. They will throw down a map of Africa, and everybody starts putting their houses and their roadways on parts of Africa. First person goes, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Seventh, they get to go twice, and then sixth, fifth, fourth, third, 3, 2, and 1. But you had to have a governmental presence there. You couldn't just claim it and have access to it. This is where Great Britain jumps out to a big lead as they make every employee of the British East India Company a governmental worker. So where the East India Company existed, Great Britain could access that territory. Africa is carved up with little understanding for migration patterns of people and animals who were migrating across the area. And the Europeans used geographic mountains, rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, and forests as borders. No African was invited to the Berlin Conference. The effect this will have later on in the 1950s is we will get a lot of Western educated Africans who will start to let's end imperialism and colonialism and refocus on African nationalism. What made us great as a people before the Europeans showed up. And so here's where we get to decolonization. You guys still good? Do you want to stop? Do you want to go? Couple different decolonial examples. They will run a circular theme. All right, there's, you get a leader, he's good, then he turns bad, and sometimes the country succeeds and sometimes it doesn't. Decolonization comes as of the Cold War. Before communism, we had like first world, second world, third world countries. After communism, a communist country would be like a second world country, so to speak. Third world was an old colonial empire that the European countries just kind of made a big mess, and then they just walked away. It's like going to a friend's house and messing up their room, and when their mom says, hey, pick up the room, you go home and your buddy's is stuck doing everything. That is what the Europeans, in a very simplistic view, will do to Africa. So some countries have a stable government, some have some semblance of an economy where they can produce something. And England and France, Great Britain and France, want to go on a slow but steady approach. We'll bring you along, kind of like your mom or your dad putting training wheels on your bicycle. You'll start with a tricycle, you'll go to the training wheels, and later on we'll take them off and you can just go. Problem with this is that it takes too long. People want it right now. So the time frame is sped up. And we're going to use some Western educated Africans to help us out here. Some results are positive, most unfortunately are not. So we're going to go back to where we started in Ghana. The modern country of Ghana used to be named the Gold Coast, a little bit lower than the old West African Empire. We have this guy, Kwame Nkrumah, and he was angry at the slowness of decolonialism. So he gets arrested in 1950, right at the end of World War II. We're in the Cold War. This is the American and Soviet, battle. And he's thrown in prison for 7 years until Ghana, as Great Britain can't really worry about it, is given its independence in 1957, the first African country to gain its independence from a colonial superpower. Well, Kwame is elected as the first prime minister, and he goes back to hearken to the age of the greatness of Africa. He renames the country Ghana. We're going to encourage nationalism. And for 9-10 years, things go okay. But poor old Kwame got corrupt. The Americans and the Soviets were trying to woo him, trying to throw money at him. So his government becomes